Hi guys, Anthony Crane here today, and we are going to be talking about product definition work types. And boy, this is gonna be a tough one in 5 minutes. Let me get that timer started, and I will try my best to nail this time box. This is a hard topic, and it's a hard badge turn as well. So for this badge, you have to understand and then actually execute on these ideas. The understanding is easy, executing takes time. When you are trying to define work for an Agile team, you have to break that work down. And in this case, we break it down to epics, features, and stories. Now, we're borrowing heavily from the SAFe paradigm for this one. So please do check out the Scaled Agile framework if you want to see more on all three of these topics. You can also look at other skills, and we'll show you in little 5-minute videos about them as well. So stories. This is work that can be done in under 2 weeks. Features is work that takes longer. In SAFe, they say 10 weeks on average. I just say a quarter for easiness. And then epics are things that take more than a quarter, and therefore there's high risk to them. We need to see value early, and so we use lean thinking and other risk management techniques to make sure that we get value out of these epics, because big means risky. So let me give you an analogy. Let's imagine that someone said we need to get telemetry on a moon landing. We're like, okay, cool, that's one piece of value. What other pieces of value do you need? And so we would list out all the pieces of value that we might need for something, right? Some product that we have. Well, we can then say, well, how long will that take us? So if we're like, oh, we can get that telemetry, it'll probably take us a couple of days, that would be a story. A story is something that we can get done in under 2 weeks. If you have a 2-week sprint, you might have a 3-week or 4-week sprint. There's reasons for that, other topic altogether. If it takes more than a sprint, so typically as much as under a quarter though, and more than a sprint, then we might call it a feature. Yeah, we can get the telemetry figured out, but it's going to take us, a couple months. And then if it's going to take us, like a half a year or more than a quarter, now we're talking about an epic, there's big risk. What can we do to do an MVP, to be doing some lean thinking on creating value earlier? And that's what epics will help us to figure out, okay? So that's the idea. So if you list out all your work, when you're done, you would then tag it all. So if you think about it, story, feature, epic are the same thing. They are nuggets of value. They're not like a normal waterfall plan where you have tasks. These are real value to the end person. And that's what makes it confusing for a lot of people. Has to be real value. So if you think about it, story, feature, epic is just a first estimate on how much work it would take us to get that done. Now it gets even more interesting. We do have tasks, so you can have tasks, and SAFe doesn't really talk a lot about them, but our teams use them a lot. Tasks are not part of product definition. They are work that has to get done in order to achieve the product definitional work, the real value work. So if you don't want to use tasks, you don't have to. Our teams like it. But one example is get Anthony a badge, right? So they're like, Anthony, people keep forgetting to get his badge. So they put it on the wall so that people don't forget about it. That's nothing to do with the product. Indirectly, yes, I'll be able to consult more and they'll have more availability because they're not coming down to get me every day. But it's very indirect. So it's just a task. It's not direct. It's not something that the client can use. Like the data telemetry that for the landing, they can use that. Here's where it gets even more crazy. Notice that we can have features and stories that don't trace upwards. So stories that don't have a feature, features that don't have an epic. I've had knockdown, drag out fights with my peers on this, some in full support, some uncomfortable. They say if you don't trace everything through a feature to an epic, because the epics are tied to the portfolio, how do I know that this work on stories and features is actually valuable? Like they're spending money, that team is spending money. How do I know they're spending on the right thing if it doesn't trace up to an epic? That's a fallacy. Turns out in SAFe, they're very clear. You can create local work at the local context. Teams can create stories if they think they're valuable. Trains can create features if they think they're valuable. Remember that list of work I told you about? If it starts off small, you don't have to create an artificial epic. And I've seen customers do that where they have epics with no valuable endpoint or epics that are just a container. That's terrible use of epics. Also on the right here, notice that we have tasks that are unparented. That freaks some people out as well. Again, get Anthony a badge is not part of a story, and yet we don't want to lose them. So we call these sprint tasks, right? Or team tasks if you prefer. We like to call them sprint tasks, and we roll them along sprint by sprint. The final piece of the puzzle. So how do we address the fact that we have stories and features that don't tie to the portfolio? Well, they do. It turns out we have to have what's called a product, and this is the move from project to product thinking. So go take a look at some of those videos if you want to learn more about it. But in there, you'll learn the portfolio consists of products, and we fund those products. They have value streams associated with them and KPIs. And as long as the KPIs are good, we don't care about whether they spend money on stories, features, or epics. We just care about the KPIs. So if you look at this, the tasks are outside the product, right? Getting me a badge doesn't help the product at all. But all this work is part of the product, and that solves the problem of how do you trace the portfolio. We know all the work that was done for that product. It's just that it was small enough to be done and it didn't need some hierarchy. Note though that the big stuff does have to be composed. Epics, if you don't decompose them, you can't prioritize features against features, stories against stories. So please do check out our other videos. Hopefully this helps you understand the hierarchy between these different types. But our other videos can give you a deeper understanding of how to actually use epics, features, stories, and products to manage your work. So that's my time box. And let me stop the recording. Thank you so much. I hope you guys found this one useful, despite its brief time span.